Holy Spirit, we want more of you.
Part 4, Skills for a Better Life. As we bring this talk to a close, it's very important that we approach it with the correct attitude. So we're going to look a little bit, what are the attitudes we need to maintain if we want to have better mental health? And it's all about change. We think one way and we have to think a different way. And for your life to improve, you need to change. And it's very, very important. And we looked a little bit at this in the first part, where we looked at the drivers and asked the question, what did they know or need to do to know that they could improve their driving skills? And it's the same with us. You need to know you can change. There is nothing that is stopping you from changing except your attitude. Another important point is that you must be determined. It's not just going to be sit back and rest. It is a proactive decision and action that you must take. You will need to stop and analyze what you are doing, using your mind to be analytically reflective. It's this mind part of us that helps us to be analytically reflective of what is going on. In the previous part, we looked at how our mind and our brain and our thought processes work. It is important that you need to remember how this works if you are going to do change. And you will need to apply the skills that I'm going to share later on in part 4. And the important thing, you need to keep practicing until the habit is formed. And this is what is the beauty about our brains. It is not fixed. We have neuroplasticity, and we can change the way we think, which will change our life. And then we can start living that life that we really want to live. Continuing with looking at our attitudes, we have to move from being a victim. A lot of people have a victim mentality. I'm a victim of my circumstances. And then people get into a lot of self-pity. We cannot remain in a victim mindset, because then you cannot be proactive and you cannot wallow in self-pity. You have to do something different. You can change your thinking to see the glass as half full rather than half empty. Just by changing the way you think, the circumstances look completely different, but that helps you to make better decisions for yourself and for those around you. As I've said, you need to be proactive. We cannot remain reactive. If you're a victim, if you're struggling in self-pity, you are going to remain reactive and you cannot change. We've got to become proactive. And here's the interesting thing. Your brain is at work all the time. As you think, it is making new neural pathways. It is growing little dendrites. And these are where information is held in the brain. So if you wanted to play a piano and you learn where to put your fingers on the keyboard, that will be held in a dendrite in your brain. And whether you do it proactively or reactively, this will happen. And so if you don't control how your brain is operating, your brain will control you. So if you are always thinking negative thoughts, always thinking that people are out to get you, that you're no good, that is what is going to happen in your life, because that will be the neural pathway that is formed in your brain, and that will control you. And as a result, it will control your circumstances. So you don't really have an option. You need to manage your thinking. You need to manage your brain thought patterns. We must remember that anxiety, depression, poor self-image is not a biomedical problem. It is the result of bad management of toxic thought. So if we are not managing our thoughts can become toxic, and obviously the result will be impacted on our body, and our bodies become ill. You must look at anxiety, depression, etc. as warning lights to what is happening in our brain, that is happening in our thinking. We mustn't look at them as, oh, that's what's happened to me, and get into the victim mentality. We need to see them as saying, hold on, we need to do something different. We need to change. And medication must be seen only as a temporary solution. It is not the solution. Yes, when we are very depressed, it's very difficult to change the way we're thinking, and we might need some medication to help us to get into a better place of thinking so that we can start doing the changes. But change we must if we want to improve our lives. So now we're going to start looking at a number of steps that we need to do, that we need to think about if we are going to change the way we are thinking, and therefore manage our mental health. Now, rule number one, and this is very, very, very important: slow it down. We have a regret zone when we speak too quickly, when we don't stop and slow it down. As we know, there's a time delay between our non-conscious part of our brain and our conscious part of the brain. When we are asleep, our conscious part is inactive, but our non-conscious part of our brain is continually active. And there is a time delay between the non-conscious and the conscious. And if we are just not giving ourselves time for our non-conscious brain to process what has happened, we will speak and we will say things that we will regret. So just reminding you, there's the brain, and the prefrontal cortex is your conscious part. The back part is your non-conscious part. And there's a time delay that information in your non-conscious part takes to formulate before a thought comes in your conscious part. And that is anywhere from 30 to 90 seconds. And if you can just slow it down and not just spontaneously respond to what people are saying or to situations, just that will help your life to change and improve and make your life a lot better. Another important step, and this is vital: do not blame others or your circumstances. We like to say it's his fault, her fault, their fault, not me, not mine. If we take that attitude, we will never change. It is very important to know this, and we will not change. You will not change if you do not own your feelings. Your feelings are a result of what somebody has said, done to you. That you can manage. Yes, it might be hurtful, but if you get into the retaliatory type of conversation, it's not going to help you or those around you. So if you do not change, you will not own your feelings, you will not live a better life. You need to take full responsibility for the situation you are in. Yes, it might be an unpleasant situation. But when you start taking responsibility for that and you slow it down, rule number one, you can start finding new ways to manage that situation for yourself, improve your life, improve your mental health, and for those around you. So, very, very important in step number 2 is how to recognize your window of tolerance. It's very, very important because when we are outside our window of tolerance, now, if you remember the part 3, we had the window of tolerance, and the top part there was where we have the fight, flight, freeze. That is where we are hypervigilant, on edge. And when we are on edge like that, we cannot think clearly with the sequential part of the left brain because blood is drawn away from that part. So the moment you are out of your window of tolerance, at the top level of the window of tolerance, you cannot do anything that is going to be helpful. And you have to check and become aware when you're out of your window of tolerance. And then you need to get yourself back into the window of tolerance so that you can be proactive and not become reactive. Now, you can get into your window of tolerance by a couple of things. And the first one is breathing. Breathing in slowly on a count of 4, breathing out through the mouth in a gentle exhalation on a count of 6. And this is all about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Breathing is our first method of controlling and getting us into a calm state. Now, when you're out of your window of tolerance, we often get out of feeling what is going on in our bodies. So we need to ground ourselves. And one of them is to feel your feet, wriggle your toes, or feel something around you, like the armchair or the wall. It brings you into the present, because when you're in your window of tolerance, you're not in the present moment, you're out of the present moment. You can also look and listen for something around you. Listen, because I can hear the clock ticking. It means that you are focusing in the present, and therefore you'll be able to make decisions that are helpful for you in the present. Another one is try and make saliva. When we are out of our window of tolerance, our mouths become dry. Another one that really can bring you back into your window of tolerance is bite an ice cube. Because it is cold, it makes you focus in the moment. And it's very important to take no action until you are in your window of tolerance, because you cannot think straight unless you are in the window of tolerance. Now, obviously, we can also drop to the bottom part of our window of tolerance, and it depends how much we go into shutdown, and depression will impact how we can think. But if you're just in a kind of a low mood at the bottom, by doing this, by grounding yourself, you can bring yourself into a place where you can make good decisions for yourself, and thus change your thinking and thus improve your mental health. It is very important to notice your thoughts. You cannot go more than 3 seconds without some thought. And we need to monitor that. Is it a positive thought or is it toxic? And you need to train yourself. Oh, I'm thinking about that. And it's very interesting when you start watching how your thoughts are popping into your conscious mind, where your thought patterns actually go. You need to notice feelings in your body, right? Is my mouth dry? I mentioned that just now. Is my heart beating faster? Is there tension? Do I feel a coldness somewhere in my body? Are my palms sweaty? All these things are indications of toxic thinking, a nervousness, that feeling in your body. You need to start noticing what your body is doing. Then you need to notice your emotions. So you're noticing your thoughts, you're noticing your body, you're noticing your emotions. What is the emotion I'm feeling? And yeah, we got a little diagram, a negative emotion, and you can do this in your journal, which I'll come to a little later. So I've got a negative emotion. Is it jealousy? Is it frustration? Is it sadness? Shame, fear, grief, guilt, sadness, depression, despair, envy, doubt. We've got to capture these thoughts so that we can start developing a new way of thinking. So it's very important to notice your thoughts, to notice your body, and notice your emotions. And a very simple way to think about your emotions is this emotion. Is it glad, sad, bad, or mad? And then you can further analyze that. When you have an emotion, you need to look at them and you need to accept them. Because if you don't, you cannot process them. We have a lot of denial and avoidance, and obviously there comes the blaming of others. But if I am feeling sad, there's a sad feeling within me, I need to acknowledge it. I need to look at it. I need to analyze, why am I feeling sad? So whatever emotion is, don't try to suppress it or deny it. But you don't have to act on it. Just notice it. Give it space. Just notice. It might intense, but then very shortly it will begin to decrease. And then you can start making positive actions, creating positive thoughts to change the way your brain is thinking. Definitely don't let your emotions define you. Don't label yourself. So you need to use words like, I am a person that is struggling with low mood, with despair, with envy. Because when you label yourself, you're creating a toxic thought pattern. And that puts you into a negative frame of mind. And obviously it impacts your body. Negative emotions impact your body negatively. So when we have that, we've looked at our thoughts, we've looked at our feelings, we've looked at the emotions, we need to start examining what is the cause or the trigger. What is going on? Why am I beginning to feel anxious? Why am I going into a low mood? And that's the thinking. Was it something I heard? Is it something I smelt? Something that was said? Was it something I saw? Was it something that I touched or somebody touched me? So you're starting to analyze why we've got the negative thought. We're looking at that, which is what is the cause or the trigger? And you can ask yourself, is this an early experience? So often we experience something in the present, but it actually relates to a past experience. Is it a person? And I just want to give you a little example here of a young student. Her lecturer, when she went into college, she did not like him. Just instantly, she did not like him. What she discovered when she got to know her lecturer, that it was his moustache that reminded her of a bad experience earlier. So it was not the person, but her brain remembered an earlier experience and was related to the moustache, the way the moustache was cut, and that triggered a negative reaction and negative thoughts. Sitting on edge, being anxious. So you have to analyze, was it a certain situation that I've been suddenly reminded of? Was it something in the environment, a noise, a sound, a screeching of brakes, whatever it is? Is it a memory? Is it a past trauma? So we need to, once we've got the emotion, we need to start saying, what is this about? Did I experience this earlier? And for the most part, we will. And then we need to own that that is a toxic thought. That is a thought that is not about the present. And therefore, we can start containing ourselves and not reacting in the present moment to things that are happening around us. So let's continue now to step 4. And there's quite a lot about journaling and the usefulness of journaling. The moment you write something down, you put something down on a piece of paper, it helps your brain to break down what you are thinking about, what is upsetting you, what is causing the anxiety, what is causing the low mood. And by looking at it with your eyes as you write it down, number one, it's slowing it down, and it gives your non-conscious brain a time to process what that thought and emotion is. So you can ask questions. Why, what, all those questions. You can write down, what do I actually fear? Why do I fear that? Why do you fear that? What do you think will happen? There's a thing which we call catastrophizing. And it's very interesting when you work with people and you start, what will happen next? That they will spiral down into a place of total breakdown of who they are or of circumstances, which will not happen. It is well known that over 99% of the things that we fear never, ever happen. So if we can control our anxiety, we will have improved mental health. So journaling helps us to understand and analyze what we are thinking, how we are thinking, writing it down. Oh, is that what I'm thinking? And it's important that you read and reread what you've written, because that's helping your non-conscious brain process and analyze. And obviously with your mind, you're doing the reflective analysis. Is that what I'm actually concerned about? And you can then start formulating a new way of thinking. So you have to apply the reflective analysis of your mind. Aha! Now there's another way you can do this. I don't know, you can try this one. And this is quite a useful one as well. And it's called a spidergram. And it looks something like this. And this person wrote down what their emotion was. They were angry. And we can just follow one of their thought patterns. And as you can see, there were many thought patterns as they just sat with anger. And what they picked up, if they were looking at that line, frustration. And then as they looked a little bit at the frustration, something was wrong, an error, a mistake, and on purpose being hurt. Or it's just another point of view, a different side to a story. And that is just one of the branches of the thinking of this person as they analyzed why they're angry. So if you first frustration, what can I do about it? Oh, well, the new way of thinking, it's just another point of view, another way of looking at the story. What is the story? You're now creating a new neural pathway of curiosity that moves you away from anger. This is a very useful little thing that you can do in your journal. So now that we've analyzed this, we've got to begin to think differently. So we have to develop a new thinking pattern. So you need to decide on a new thought opposite to the toxic thought. And it can be multiple things, and obviously that's why you need to do the reflective analysis so that you can create these new opposite thought patterns that are more positive in nature. You need to write it down in your journal. It's important to write it down. And one of the things that I suggest to people with this is they take Post-its and they write this new thought down. So instead of being frustrated, I can be curious. I can ask a question. Write it on a whole lot of Post-its and put it on various places in your living environment where you regularly go. Because every time you see it, it goes through your eye gate and your brain starts to develop a new neural pathway, which then develops a new way of thinking on a positive, not a negative line. And it's important to repeat it several times daily. I can be curious. I can be curious. And by just saying that, you are starting to develop a new neural pathway and a new dendrite. Now, as you think a new thought, our brain has little nuclei and there's little branches. And on that branch, as you think the new thought, a little bump appears. And the more you think about that thought, the more this little bump begins to grow and it looks something like a tree. And so it's feeding this new thought pattern continually, and it develops and develops and develops. And by day 21, your brain would have developed an automatic default which you can record immediately. So if you wanted to remember a certain new word, like nidiphidius, you keep repeating that after 21 days. By 21 days, you have it. But it takes 21 days for that recall to develop automatically. Now, to make it permanent, you need to repeat it for another 42 days. Let's make it a habit. Now, after you've created this new dendrite with this word nidifidius, after 21 days, and you don't think about it for the rest of the year, in a year's time, it will be very, very difficult to recall. But if you continue the habit, it becomes so permanent that you can do it automatically. So let's take, and I presume all of you can drive a car. Do you think about how you drive the car? No, you just do it automatically because you started to grow those little dendrites and you kept repeating them. And today it is so well formulated in your brain that you do it automatically. And here's the interesting thing. It's so well formulated in your brain, you cannot unlearn it. So you can now take your brain and you can develop a whole new way of thinking about everything so that you don't have negative thoughts and toxic energy running through your body and making you feel depressed and anxious. Now, in summary, the first thing is to create these new thought patterns, this new way of thinking. Slow it down. Very, very important. Stop responding in the moment. The knee-jerk is not going to help you. It only escalates into chaos. You got to notice your emotions. Continue to monitor. What am I feeling? Right now, what are you feeling as you've been listening to this talk? Very, very important. Don't blame shift. Don't blame others. Your reaction is your reaction and your responsibility, and you can respond differently. Think what is underlying your emotion. Why am I thinking this way? Where did I experience this negative thought process? Most of the times, it comes from what happened in our childhood. Formulate another way of thinking. Yes, you will have to do it. Yes, you will have to persevere. But if you don't, your brain is just going to continue in its old patterns and your mental health will probably deteriorate. Develop and grow your thinking. And that's very, very important. You can do it. And to help you, have an accountability partner. It is quite an interesting thing that as we develop a new kind of thought pattern, usually there's a struggle about day 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't want to do it. And then you get to day 15. Yeah, I've got that. And you just begin to drop off. That dendrite will drop off and eventually you'll go to your older patterns. Having somebody to hold you accountable is very, very useful. Somebody that will say to you, how's it going? How are you managing? The question is, who are you? In part 2, we learned that people are getting their identity from what the internet is presenting to them. It's presenting, if you got this object, if you got the latest tech, if you got the better car, if you got the salary, if you dress like this, if you got the Rolex watch, if you got this, if you got that, you're somebody. If you get enough likes, you're somebody. You cannot get your identity from objects. You cannot get your identity from what people say, because most of the time they're struggling with their own toxic thinking. We call them influencers. They influence you really for their own gain. And you cannot get your identity from your achievements. Beating somebody, if you are doing mountain bike racing, beating somebody, next week somebody else can beat you. You cannot get your identity from things that are not permanent. And may I be bold enough to suggest, you need to get your identity from something bigger, something more permanent than these factitious things that give us a sense of I am somebody, like the God who created you. Here is a final thought: forgiveness. And there's a lot of research about forgiveness and how forgiveness will change how your brain operates. It is absolutely stunning. And when we forgive, we are letting go of resentment. We cannot hold on, you still owe me. When we forgive, we let go and we release that person. But here is the key of forgiveness. It actually sets you free from being controlled by that person. Forgiveness, when you apply it, is all about yourself. If you want to be free from being controlled, being under the influence of somebody, I would suggest you need to forgive. Here are some quotes off the internet. Forgiveness delivers tangible, structural changes in the brain and body as neural networks that control the stress. It delivers structural change in the body as neural networks that controls the stress are changed. It's a bit of a misquote there, apologies. The result is that those who practice forgiveness as an intentional act of diminishing the hold of the past on us experience a sense of subjective release that also releases additional mental and physical resources that can be used to achieve more positive outcomes, helping you to think. And this is by a person, David Amerland, and you can go and research that if you want to. So with the final thoughts as we come to close the session. When you forgive, you need to let go all expectations of any response. That frees you up. And you can learn more about the spiritual impact of forgiveness in my book, A Road to Freedom, which is available in paperback ebook and soon as an audiobook. It's online and at all good bookstores. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a better life. Thank you for watching.